Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great webinar here on cpaacademy.org. My name is Chris, and I will be your webinar host for today. Our topic today is Understanding the New 179D Energy Deduction Plus Inflation Reduction Act Updates. And our presenters are Abby Massey and Austin Legler. Before taking a deep dive on this topic, folks, if you haven't already, go to your Q&A questions panel and let me know where on earth you're located from today, and let me know that you can see me, see Austin, see Abby, and see the very first slide. Also in the Q&A, let me know where on earth you're located today. We love to know where attendees are coming to us today. And I am seeing folks coming from all over: West Virginia, Georgia, Texas, Miami, California, Florida, Long Island. Fantastic. Welcome one and welcome all. Now, this Q&A can be used in a couple of ways. If you have any questions regarding content, please put them there, and Abby or Austin will indeed answer those questions. If you have any technical issues, put them there, and I will get you guys as soon as I possibly can. Just remember, there is one of me, and there are very many of you. One other area of housekeeping today is going to be your CPE. This lasts with 1 hour of CPE. And the way you will earn that is stay logged in for 50, that's 50 minutes of the allotted time, and answer 3 or 4 polling questions. Your credit will be indeed processed today and will be available in approximately 24 hours. Also, please download the handouts that have made available for you. And with no further ado, please welcome Austin Legler.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody for being here, making time this afternoon or morning, wherever you are in the world, I suppose. Definitely thrilled to have so many of you with us today. Chris already covered some of the housekeeping stuff. Hopefully your sound and video was working fine. If you're having any trouble hearing or seeing us during the presentation, just drop that note in the chat, and we'll do our best to help you out. And then just to reiterate, if you're looking for CPE credits, got to stay logged in for 50 minutes and then answer at least 3 out of the 4 polling questions. Those will pop up on your screen throughout the presentation. And you'll have 1 minute to answer those questions, as Chris also mentioned. All right, so just a little bit about us, TaxTaker. We're based in Austin, Texas, and our mission is to make tax credits and incentives more accessible for businesses all over the country. So our platform we've built is all about simplicity and efficiency, really helping you navigate the maze of government incentives like R&D tax credits is something we offer. And as we're going to touch on today, more importantly, is the Section 179D tax deduction. So our team here is here to make sure that you get the most out of these opportunities while staying on top of all the rules and regulations and remaining compliant. So again, thanks for being here. And now I'm going to hand it over to Abby, who's going to dive into the world of 179D energy deduction and see what's new with the Inflation Reduction Act.
Thanks, Austin. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're certainly glad you're here. My name's Abby Massey. I'm the Vice President of Energy Incentives at TaxTaker. Just a little bit about me before we get started. I'm a professional engineer by background, licensed in 46 states in the District of Columbia. I have certified over 1,400 179D deductions myself. I have been doing this work for over 8 years now, so definitely entrenched in the details of the 179D program. And also prior to that, I was in the building industry, so a structural engineer doing building design, where I attained my LEED accredited professional. So the energy efficiency realm in the building world has always been a passion of mine. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to go over a few things about the 179D program. We're going to go over the changes in the program that were introduced by the Inflation Reduction Act. We'll talk about all of the required items that you need for a compliant 179D study. We'll go over a few examples of clients we've worked with and projects we've worked with in the past. We'll talk about a few other tax incentives that are relevant to the building space and real estate, and how to identify a 179D opportunity for your client. Okay, a few milestones about the Section 179D program. So a lot of folks are hearing about this program now because of the Inflation Reduction Act and the enhancements to the 179D program. But this program has actually been available since the Energy Policy Act of 2005. So that is when 179D was initially introduced. In 2008, there was a notice that essentially allowed eligible designers to claim the 179D deduction on behalf of government building owners. So that was a big change in the program where designers could then claim the 1790 deduction in addition to building owners. And then importantly, in 2020, with the Consolidation Appropriation Act, Section 1790 became a permanent fixture of the tax code. So now we can rely upon this deduction to pursue for our clients. And then in 2022, again, the Inflation Reduction Act was introduced, which enhanced the 1790 program. To understand how the 1790 study process works, we first start with an estimate, and that's where a provider or CPA will gather information about the building to determine what the deduction range could potentially be. A site visit then must be conducted by a professional engineer or a professional certified contractor. In addition to the site visit, an energy modeling analysis will be conducted. That will help us determine the energy savings and the resulting deduction rate for this program. For our designers, an allocation letter must be obtained, and this allocation letter will be something we'll go over here in just a little bit. And then with those components, we can deliver the deduction to be applied to a return. So the requirements for a 1790 study, there are a few forms that you do need to complete for a compliance study to go on a return. The first is Tax Form 7205. So this is a worksheet that would be attached to the return that is specific for the Section 1790 program. You would need a certification and site visit performed by a qualified individual. A qualified individual is someone like myself, a professional engineer, and we'll go over those details here in just a little bit. An energy model. This energy model must be created by Department of Energy approved software, and there is a list online of what softwares and interfaces are eligible for the 1790 program. And then again, for those designers claiming this deduction, a signed allocation letter will be needed to apply for this deduction on your tax return. So let's quickly go over the summary of changes that were implemented from the Inflation Reduction Act. For those of you that know anything about it, there were a lot of energy incentives that were either introduced or enhanced in the Inflation Reduction Act, 1790 being included. And so there were many great expansions and increases in value to the program. So the very first is an increased deduction amount. Originally in 2022, the maximum deduction you could receive was $1.88 per square foot on your qualified facilities. Now that maximum rate increased to $5.36 per square foot in 2023. That will actually be slightly higher in 2024 as inflation adjustments are included. There are some requirements to qualify for this expanded rate, which we'll go over later in today's webinar. The deduction now will actually reset. So originally in the program prior to the Inflation Reduction Act, the lifetime maximum deduction you could claim on a facility was $1.88 per square foot. So even if you performed qualified work after you claim that $1.88, essentially that deduction was claimed and nothing else could be claimed in the future. Now, what you're able to do is include in your analysis the last 3 years of deductions that were claimed. So if you did a study maybe 4 years ago, then that would fall outside of those 3 years you need to consider, and you can claim that maximum value again, which is great because it is enhancing the ability for building owners to make continual improvements and claim this valuable deduction. For tax-exempt entities, they can now allocate this deduction to a designer of their energy efficient systems. So originally that was just government building owners. Now in 2023, tax-exempt entities can also allocate the 1790 deduction. The results analysis is different. So we're still using an energy modeling analysis to do the calculation, but there used to be a partial and full deduction, and those had their own qualifying rates. We have removed the partial deductions, and now we have an all systems analysis that we will perform on every project, with the minimum threshold of energy savings being 25%. Originally, an all systems analysis would have required a 50% energy cost savings to qualify. Now it is 25%. To qualify for that maximum $5.36 that we had discussed prior, you do need to reach 50%, but you get percentage points for every percentage you show between the 25% and 50%. And then the last is the alternative method. So in addition to the energy modeling analysis, the IRS has proposed that we're able to take a look at qualified retrofit projects as a before and after look. So we would no longer use the energy modeling analysis. We instead would monitor the building before the project and after the project to determine the energy savings. So for the 1790 program, I talked about the all systems, the systems that make a building eligible. So what are those? The three systems that we can consider for a 1790 analysis are the HVAC and hot water, the interior lighting, and the building envelope system. So building envelope would comprise of a roof system, insulation, wall systems, or new windows. If you install one or any of these systems on a building, then you would be eligible to pursue a 1790 deduction. This can be new construction, this can be a retrofit project, or this can be in addition to an existing building. So what are some examples of some of this equipment? I'm sure as CPAs, this isn't your normal speak to talk about the HVAC, interior lighting, or building envelope equipment. So here's a few systems that are eligible. Again, this isn't going to be a comprehensive list, but a few examples for you. So we're talking about air handling units, heat pumps. These are very popular right now. Fan coil units, variable frequency drives. Building automation systems. So if you're controlling your HVAC system with a smart automated technology, same with your lighting system, that could make you eligible for a 1790 deduction. LED lighting upgrades are great projects for Section 1790. And again, we talked about the building envelope systems, but just to reiterate, windows, roofing materials, wall constructions, all of those things would make you eligible to pursue a 1790 deduction. Eligible projects, we went over the project type. We can pursue new construction, renovations, or additions or expansions to buildings. Project size, there really is no limit, but just based off of my experience, if you're going to pursue a project that was placed into service or construction completed in 2022 or prior, you probably need to consider a building 25,000 square feet or larger for a deduction to really make sense for a client. Post-IRA, because of those higher rates, especially if we're qualifying for the $5 rate, we can look at buildings even as small as 10,000 square feet or larger. Again, this is something that we can discuss pretty quickly with the client, understanding the scope of the work and the size of their building and what they're going to be eligible for to determine if that building size will make sense for a 1790 deduction. Conditioned building space is important. So no matter what, the building does need to be heated and or cooled for us to consider it for a Section 1790 deduction. But there is a provision that if parking garages were eligible in the pre-IRA methodology. So if you constructed a parking garage in say 2022 or prior, you could claim the 1790 deduction. Unfortunately, that was removed from the program when the IRA was enacted. So we'll go ahead and jump to polling question 1.
Yes, indeed, folks. Polling question number 1 is live and active on your screens now. And the question is asking, what energy efficient system is not eligible for the 179 deduction? Make your choices now, folks, and this poll is active for 60 seconds. Your choices are HVAC and hot water, choice B, interior lighting, choice C, exterior lighting, or D, building envelope. And remember, folks, if you guys have any questions for Abby or Austin, you can put them in the Q&A.
I do see a question here, Abby. By Andy, thank you, Andy, for submitting your question. If I am a not-for-profit healthcare system, how far back can I go on a project completed in the past that I feel may now qualify for 179D?
Yes, that's a great question, Andy. So for nonprofits, when they're allocating the 179D deduction to an eligible designer, you can go back to projects in 2023 And then on the future, you'll be able to claim that. It would be when the Inflation Reduction Act was enacted that you would be able to pursue those projects. Now, for government building owners, you can go back all the way to the inception of the program, which was in the starting date would be January 1st, 2006 for eligibility.
Indeed, folks, we'll close up poll number 1 now in 3, 2, and 1. And the majority of the attendees coming in at 42% correctly chose answer C, exterior lighting. So back over to you.
Very good. All right, so now that we've covered some highlights of the 1790 program, we're going to go over the folks who can actually claim the 1790 deduction. So I see a question, what is an eligible designer? Freddie, we'll go over that here in just a moment. So the first bucket of clients that can pursue 1790 are private building owners. So if you own a building and you pay taxes, you can claim the Section 1790 deduction. The eligible buildings that we can look at are commercial or high-rise residential. So anything that's 4 stories above grade is a high-rise residential, we can claim the 1790 deduction on. Eligible projects are any projects that completed construction since the 1790 program was introduced to the tax code. So that would be January 1st, 2006. For most folks, we aren't looking back quite that far, but we have had clients who looked all the way back to even 2011 and claimed a partial deduction on their facilities. So if you had recently done projects or even in the last 10 years, did a new construction or renovation project, it's still not too late. You can claim this benefit. As a private building owner, this is considered an accelerated depreciation deduction. So we would accelerate the depreciation of the building and the basis to claim this, this benefit, and it is applied to the next original return. So the other bucket of candidates who can claim the 1790 deduction are designers. So the tax code definition of an eligible designer is anyone who creates the technical specifications for the installation of energy efficient property. Technical specifications really are any sort of documents that demonstrate that there was a design element and that is being implemented into the construction or retrofit project. So for a designer, the eligible buildings are still commercial and high-rise residential, but they would be able to claim an allocation from government and now tax-exempt building owners starting in 2023. For eligible projects, we would be looking at any project that completed construction in an amendable tax year. So this is a little bit different than the way that a private building owner would claim the 1790 deduction. It goes on the tax year that the project was completed. So for most entities, we can typically look 3 years back from the current year. So we have some clients right now, we're wrapping up any projects that they completed in 2020. And then the benefit, this deduction goes on the tax year that the project was completed, and it goes on the other deductions line for those designers, since there is no building that they own and depreciation that they can take. I've got a quick question here. If you are the contractor, you cannot take the 1790, only the owner of the property. If you're a contractor, you can claim the 1790 deduction. It would be for any work you do at government or tax exempt buildings, and it would depend on your activities. So we would be looking for, let's say, design assist roles, design build roles, where that contractor has design input into the project. Even a direct to owner project could work. If there is no architect or engineer, and as a contractor, you're helping to identify the problem and then implement a solution in the project, then you could potentially be a designer that can claim the 1790 deduction. Great question. So the designers, there are examples in the tax code. This further substantiates that a contractor can claim it. Examples included in the tax code are architects and engineers, which is how most of us see design elements, but also contractors, environmental consultants, and energy service providers. Who's eligible to allocate the 1790 deduction to these designers? So we've covered the government entities and the tax-exempt entities, but here's a few examples for you. Public K-12 schools, universities, the military, so Army, Navy, Air Force, DOD, airport authorities, or any sort of county, city, state entities. Really anybody who is a government entity that does not pay taxes would be eligible to allocate. And then our tax-exempt entities, the program is new for these folks as of 2023, are other universities who are nonprofit, charter schools, hospitals, churches, Indian tribal governments, and Alaska Native corporations are all eligible to potentially allocate the 179D deduction to their designers. I've got another question here. Would a leaseholder be eligible? Yes, a leaseholder can be eligible to claim the 179D deduction under very certain circumstances. If they install and pay for the energy efficient equipment that is going in, and they would depreciate that on their tax return. In that case, they would be able to claim it, but they probably would need to confirm with the building owner that the 179D deduction wasn't ever claimed in the past, because that would need to be considered. Okay, an allocation letter, right? We've talked a lot about that. Designers need this for a compliant 179D deduction. So there are very specific requirements that must go on a 179D allocation letter. Contact information for the authorized representative of the building owner and designer. So that would be someone from the government or tax exempt entity, and then someone from the designer claiming the deduction. The address of the building, the cost of property that is being installed, and that can include the hard and soft costs. The place and service date, or that construction completion date, the amount of the 179D deduction, and then there is a penalties of perjury statement that must be included on a legitimate allocation letter per the IRS guidelines. In addition to the allocation letter, we need to conduct a site visit for a compliant 179D study. The purpose is to visually verify that the project's complete, it's operational, and that the equipment installed matches and documents provided that the taxpayer and building owner provided to us. So really, as the professional engineer, we're determining, okay, is this equipment installed? Does it have the same technical specifications that we have in our energy model? If not, we're going to make those adjustments in the energy model. The qualified individual that must perform this site visit needs to be someone not related to the taxpayer claiming the deduction under Section 179D. So again, someone who isn't on the staff of the designer claiming it, isn't being paid as a part of the project is important. That's where a firm like ours comes into play, where we provide that third-party service. And then they also need to be an engineer that is properly licensed as a professional engineer in the jurisdiction in which the building is located. Contractors that are licensed in those jurisdictions can also do the 179D, but we use professional engineers so that they can certify the deduction as well. Again, it does need to be somebody who is licensed, who conducts the site visit, and it should be an in-person site visit to verify that this project is installed and operational. So now we're going to move on to how the 179D deduction is calculated. What we're determining is the annual energy cost savings, and this would be a percentage by comparing a proposed building and a reference building. So the proposed building is an energy model of the building that includes the new energy efficient equipment that was installed. So essentially, this is an energy model that looks just like the building that we see when we complete our site visit. The reference building is an energy model of the building that includes the minimum standards as required by the building code ASHRAE 90.1 2007. So this is the standard that we're comparing our proposed building to. Again, in the energy modeling analysis, this isn't a before and after look of the project. This is going to be our building as it stands today compared to that ASHRAE 90.1 2007 baseline standard. Right now, this is the code that we need to reference back to, and it's very advantageous because LED lighting was not the standard in the ASHRAE 90.1 2007 guidelines. So when you have LED lighting installed in a project, it inherently does very well against this baseline code, which accounts for fluorescent lighting. So that's just one example of how building owners are claiming a 179D deduction with these energy efficient improvements as compared back to this earlier, I would say more outdated code. Now in 2027, this code will change to ASHRAE 90.1 2019. So it will be much harder to qualify if you aren't considering energy improvements as a part of your project. So the Department of Energy, again, has an approved software list for Section 179D that's published online, but some examples of softwares that we can use are Design Builder, the DOE 2.2, Energy Plus, eQuest, the hourly analysis program or HAP program. You can also use Open Studio with Energy Plus or Trace 3D Plus. There are certain versions that are approved, so you need to make sure that the version you're utilizing is on the approved list. But my team specifically uses eQuest and Energy Plus. Okay, moving on from the energy modeling analysis, our last document that's really required, besides the form that gets attached to the return, is the certification. Again, a certification must be signed and sealed by an engineer to ensure that the energy modeling process was done properly and to the requirements of the IRS tax code. Some items that are required to be on the certification is a statement from the qualified individual that they do meet those requirements. It will state the energy savings and how the building qualified. It will have the energy modeling program used, the annual energy cost of the building, that proposed building. So again, the building that is actually standing with the project in place. It should have the energy efficient features listed, and it also has a penalties of perjury statement on there. So again, these are requirements outlined by the tax code that should be included on your certification to ensure that it is meeting everything that we need to meet for the 179D deduction. Okay, we're ready for polling question number 2.
Yes, indeed, folks. Poll number 2 is live and active on your screens. And the question is asking, when did the enhancements from the Inflation Reduction Act become active? Make your choices now, folks. And this poll is active for 60 seconds.
See a couple of other questions here, Abby, if
Sure.
you want to run through. I see one from Nicole. Is commercial defined by zoning or actual use? For example, if zoned residential, but it's used for commercial purposes, does that qualify?
Really what we're looking at when we're considering commercial buildings is what falls within the ASHRAE 90.1 guideline. ASHRAE 90.1's title is commercial and high-rise residential. So whatever would fall within that code would be eligible for 179D. There are specific codes for buildings like hospitals. Those also are considered commercial and can be included.
Alrighty, folks. So we'll close down poll number 2 now in 3, 2, and 1. Closing out the poll, and the majority of the attendees coming in at 43% are saying 1/1/2023.
Excellent. All right, I have one more question here. Are owners required to register via the IRA or CHIPS pre-filing registration tool for 179D? If anybody is familiar with this, there is a pre-filing registration tool that the IRS just recently published for some tax incentives included in the Inflation Reduction Act. 179D is not one of them. We will go over a program here in just a little bit that does require that pre-filing registration, and I will be sure to note it then. Okay, so let's talk about the value of the Section 179D program. So we'll call this the original method, which is any project that was completed before the Inflation Reduction Act rules came into place. This is where we would receive either a partial deduction or a full deduction based on the energy cost savings percentage we achieved from the energy modeling analysis. So what we're able to do is, again, at the bottom line, we have a combination of HVAC, interior lighting, and building envelope. If those 3 systems achieve a 50% energy cost savings, you would get the full deduction, which is $1.80 per square foot, plus any inflation adjustments in the 2021 or 2022 year. If for whatever reason your project wasn't able to achieve that energy cost savings, we can actually go to a partial analysis. And so we would parse out each system and analyze them individually. So we could take a look at the HVAC and hot water, and it would only need to achieve a 15% energy cost savings to achieve a 60 cent per square foot deduction. Interior lighting would be 25%, and building envelope would be 10%. So it's actually possible that if you do an all systems model where you include all 3, but you don't achieve the 50%, that you still get $1.80 per square foot by itemizing each system, doing their own analysis, and achieving those lower energy cost saving percentages. Here's a quick example, a building owner that we previously worked with that did an analysis for a project completed in 2020. So this would be the old methods. The building was approximately 100,000 square feet. We rounded the numbers so that the math is a little bit easier to follow. It was a manufacturing facility, and the renovation included HVAC and lighting upgrades. So they impacted 2 of the 3 systems. They were able to achieve an over 50% annual energy cost savings, so they were qualified for that maximum $1.80 per square foot. In 2020, there were no inflation adjustments, so it's just the straight $1.80 per square foot. So at $1.80 per square foot times 100,000 square feet, they were eligible for $180,000. This would be an accelerated depreciation deduction in this case. Let's discuss the new method that was introduced from the Inflation Reduction Act, as it is very different, and we're talking about those enhanced benefits or those increased rates. So these would be, again, eligible for projects that completed construction on or after January 1st, 2023. We would be looking at a minimum for a 25% reduction. So that is the barrier of entry to qualify. Each additional point would give you more money per square foot. And then at 50%, you would achieve your maximum rate of either $1 per square foot or $5 per square foot, plus those inflation adjustments. So again, for 2023, it's $5.36 per square foot and $1.07 per square foot. So you're wondering, why are there 2 different values? Well, there are a prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements that were introduced by the Inflation Reduction Act that must be met to qualify for those, what I would call bonus rates, or that $5 per square foot rate. The prevailing wage and apprenticeship act requirements are actually requirements for several of the incentives. So in some cases, building owners can pursue multiple incentives that we'll cover here in a bit, and these would enhance the rates for all of them. So let's go over what those prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements, or we will go over what they are here in just a little bit. But before then, let's go over an example. So again, we'll use the same building owner that we had discussed before, but let's assume his project completed in June of 2023. So now he's eligible for those Inflation Reduction Act rates. We're just going to assume for this case that he is eligible and met the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. So he's eligible for those $5.36 rates. Again, the building stats stay the same. So 100,000 square feet manufacturing facility with a renovation that included HVAC and lighting. If he were to achieve that 50% annual energy cost savings, now we're talking about a rate of $5.36 per square foot. So multiply that times the 100,000 square feet. That's a $536,000 deduction. That's significantly larger than the $180,000 deduction he would have gotten for the exact same project in 2020. So as you can see, the Inflation Reduction Act impact was significant for anyone claiming the 1790 deduction. The new alternative method that I had mentioned before is an addition from the Inflation Reduction Act. This is a before and after look of the building. So no longer are we going to do the energy modeling analysis. We are going to take a look at the project before it went into place and after it went into place. The only projects that would be eligible here are projects that had qualified retrofit plans. And so these plans must be prepared by a licensed architect or engineer. In most cases, a retrofit plan would be prepared, but it does need to be energy efficient, and an architect or engineer would need to certify that this indeed was meant to increase energy efficiency. What we're doing to determine that's energy savings is measuring the EUI, or energy use intensity, again, before and after the project's in place. But we are waiting on more guidance from the IRS on how a building owner can elect to use this method. So hopefully this year they will issue the guidance that allows building owners to take a look at this method. It should be something that's high on their priority list as we move forward from the initial legislation being passed. Okay, so as promised, we'll go over the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements for those bonus rates in the Inflation Reduction Act. So the first will be the prevailing wage requirement. And just to reiterate, we have to meet both of these requirements to qualify for the bonus rates. So for prevailing wage, all laborers and mechanics employed by the taxpayer, contractor, or subcontractor on the project must be paid prevailing rates determined by the Department of Labor for the type of work we performed in that area or that locality. So if you're unsure of what those might be, or you're working with a building owner who wants to understand what that change in cost would be to make sure their laborers and mechanics are being paid prevailing wages, there's a great website, www.sam.gov. You can easily select construction and then the state and county that your project's being constructed to determine what those prevailing wages would be in that area. And then the apprenticeship requirement. There's actually 3 components to meeting the apprenticeship requirement. There's a labor hours, a ratio, and a participation. So essentially what the labor hours requirement is that the taxpayer must ensure that 15% of the total labor hours are performed by qualified apprentices from a registered apprenticeship program. So these are things that you can find online. They should be registered. Apprenticeship.gov, I believe, is the website that you can utilize. In 2023, the percentage was 12.5%. So it was slightly lower, but 15% will be for 2024 moving forward. For the ratio, the applicable ratio of apprentices to journey workers must be met per the guidelines of that registered program. So they will make sure, if you reach out to that registered program, ask for that, they'll make sure that you meet those applicable ratios. And then for participation, any taxpayer, contractor, or subcontractor that employs 4 or more laborers or mechanics must also hire at least 1 qualified apprentice. So this is a little bit detailed. This is a little bit nuanced, but if you have a provider who's familiar with these and you can bring them on early on a project, they can help guide a building owner through these requirements, connect them to hopefully to registered programs that could then also help them meet these requirements. Something to note, though, is that there is a good faith exemption for the apprenticeship requirement. So if a request was denied by a registered program or they don't respond within 5 business days, the taxpayer is actually assumed to have done their good faith effort to qualify for the apprenticeship requirement, and you can receive the bonus rate. So documentation of your outreach, any communication you have with these programs would be important to ensure you're either meeting these requirements or you're eligible for the good faith exemption. For projects beginning construction before January 29th, 2023, or on January 29th, 2023, this is really important. They do not need to meet the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. The reason for that being is that the guidance was published in November 2022. That really helped us to understand what those requirements would be. And the IRS gave us a 60-day notice that in 60 days, these requirements would be needed to be met if a project had not begun construction. So per the IRS, beginning construction means actual physical labor. So someone walking on site and beginning to build or construct, or you at least incurred 5% or more of the total cost. The one thing to note, the project can't go on hold for any lengthy amount of time. Otherwise, it would have been considered a start and a stop, and your new start date would be when the project commenced. So this is a special thing because projects that began, again, before these dates, but are being placed into service in 2023 or future will automatically qualify for those higher $5 rates without meeting the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. So there is kind of a sweet spot of projects that building owners and designers should be capitalizing on. Okay, a quick Section 179D example, again, with these new rates, just a side-by-side comparison when we're looking at meeting prevailing wage and not meeting prevailing wage. So on the left side, we did meet the prevailing wage. So at energy savings of 36%, you would be eligible for $3.60 plus the inflation adjustment. That would be a $360,000 deduction. And on the right side, we're looking at same standards, but we would not be eligible for the prevailing wage and apprenticeship. So it's $72,000 deduction instead. So you see a significant increase. It's really a 5 times multiplier which is why it's really important to factor in the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements on the project, because it's a significant increase in value. All right, we're ready for polling question number 3.
Yes, indeed we are, folks. Your third polling question is live and active. How many clients have you worked with that previously claimed the 179D deduction? Make your choices now, folks, and this poll is active for another 60.
Couple of questions I see here, Abby. I think one from Vincent is, can this create NOLs?
Yes, but the 179D deduction can be carried forward.
All right. I don't know if we have answered this one yet or not from Deborah, but are licensed home inspectors eligible to claim the deduction?
Licensed home inspectors would not be able to claim the deduction unless you had a design element. So as the home inspector, if you were designing something, then potentially, but again, it would need to be high-rise, 4 stories or higher above grade multifamily projects.
Alrighty, folks, and we'll close this poll down now in 3, 2, and 1, and back over to you.
Great, thank you. All right, so a strategy for using multiple incentives. This is important because often some of these projects qualify for 179D, but also other incentives that can be used on the same project. A few federal tax incentives you should keep in mind when you're talking about a project that is eligible for Section 179D. First is the 45L program. It's the new energy efficient home credit. This is available to developers and contractors who are constructing. So again, those multifamily high-rise residential could claim both. Section 48, the investment tax credit. This is available for installing renewable energy property. And then cost segregation. This is a tool that most CPAs probably know or are familiar with. This is great for new construction projects, large renovation projects, and even purchases of buildings to accelerate depreciation forward. There's also local and state programs. So there's utility rebates based on the area and the programs that are available. There's county and city tax abatement programs. There's even grants that can be applied that can all be stacked onto these federal incentives as well. And then there's even financing programs. There's a program called PACE, and this would depend on the city and county as of whether they've adopted this, but PACE program is available financing that is for energy efficient programs. So you can use a combination of incentives to fund these projects, which is really wonderful. So we're going to quickly go over some of these programs, just some highlights so you have them. So the cost segregation program, it allows you to segregate the components of your building and assign new makers property classes. So typically you would depreciate a commercial building on a 39-year lifespan or residential on a 27.5. Cost segregation says, let's not look at it as a building. We'll look at it as parts and pieces and assign a class to the structure, the land improvements, the furnitures and fixtures, all the different components of a building. This allows a building owner to accelerate their depreciation forward. Bonus depreciation does apply to cost segregation, which increases the value of this analysis. The Section 45L program, this again is the new energy efficient home property. This was enhanced through the Inflation Reduction Act as well. So it existed before, but it has increased values thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act. It's available for single or multifamily dwelling units that are going to be leased or sold. So a developer who is building and is planning to lease or sell those properties could claim this. For 2022 and earlier projects, you're looking at a credit of $2,000 per dwelling unit, and it's determined on energy savings that would be calculated from an energy model. For 2023 and later projects, the max credit is $5,000 per dwelling unit, and this is based purely on Energy Star certification or the Department of Energy Zero Energy Ready Home certification. So you achieve one of those certifications and you can claim the 45L credit. Something to note, the reason why there's changing values, again, the prevailing wage requirements do apply to Section 45L. So those values would change based on whether you met those requirements. The investment tax credit, this is Section 48. It's available for installing renewable energy property like solar panels or geothermal heat pump systems. There's a whole list of systems, so if you'd like that, just reach out. We're happy to provide you those, but the two most common that I speak to with folks are solar panel systems or geothermal heat pumps. This, again, is eligible for certain rates based on criteria you meet, one of them being prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. So here they are again. The base credit is 6% of the eligible energy property basis. And what that is typically the cost of the system and any soft costs related to installing that system. You can achieve the 30% bonus rate if you meet prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements or your system generates less than 1 megawatt of energy. So if you have a small system you're installing, you would just automatically be eligible for that 30%. And then there's actually add-on credits here. So if your solar panels are domestically manufactured, you can actually receive additional credits on top of that 6% or 30%. And then if it's located in an energy community, which could be like a brownfield site that you're remediating and building on, or a site that had natural gas or a coal-fired plant that you're now going to build maybe a solar farm. These would be added on again to whatever base or bonus credit you achieved. Oh, the investment tax credit, to go back to the question about the IRS pre-filing registration. This is a program that requires pre-filing registration. Government building owners and tax-exempt building owners can claim this credit. So this is very unique, and it's to only very specific programs in the Inflation Reduction Act. But they, as a government or nonprofit, would, if installing solar panels, would register for the credit through that IRS portal. And then here's a quick example. If you're going to utilize multiple incentives on a project, they can really stack up. So we were recently working with a commercial real estate developer who's developing a high-rise residential apartment complex. There's 8 residential buildings, 1 clubhouse, which would be commercial, and there's 183 eligible dwelling units. So in credits, they're going to be able to claim 45L for any of the buildings that are 4 stories or higher. And so that credit would be $457,500. And then the investment tax credit, they actually installed solar panels on the clubhouse. So they're going to get 30% of the system, of the cost to install that system. So their total potential credits would be $483,000. And then for deductions, they're going to be able to claim 179D on their properties that are 4 stories or higher. Eligible at the max $5 per square foot rate, that'd be $625. And then for the cost segregation that they can take on the properties, they're looking at approximately $1.75 million for that accelerated depreciation deduction. So we're looking at a total potential deduction of around $2.4 million for this project. So as you can see, when you include all of the credits and deductions, these can really stack up. Okay, we're ready for polling question number 4.
Alrighty, folks, poll 404 is on your screens now. Are you interested in learning more about the 179D program? Make your choice now, folks. And this poll, of course, is active for 60.
All right. A couple other questions here I see. One from David. Is there a distinction in availability to local building codes?
Local building codes don't have anything to do with the 179D program. The one that we're really concerned with is ASHRAE 90.1 2007. So I know in some areas of the country, your local building code is well beyond that, which is wonderful. It means that you're constructing at a minimum at a much more efficient rate than probably the ASHRAE 90.1 2007 standard. Some areas of the country are still using 2007, so they're going to purposefully need to implement energy efficient projects to qualify.
Alrighty, folks, we'll close this poll down now in 3, 2, and 1. And Abby and Austin, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so how about finding opportunities for your clients? Here's some quick tips to identify projects that could be eligible for specifically 179D, but in some cases, some of these other incentives we just discussed about. do they own commercial or residential rental property, right? If they do, there's probably a chance, if they aren't planning on improvements in the future, that they made some improvements in the past that could make them eligible to claim one of these incentives. Again, are they considering purchasing or newly constructing? If this is something they're discussing, introducing these tax incentives early and often is great, because then they could potentially maximize their benefit that they receive on the backside. Have they renovated, or are they considering renovating an existing property? Again, they can go back and claim Section 179D if they didn't prior. And then, are your clients climate conscious or have net zero or decarbonization goals? So if they do, this might not be something they're discussing yet, but they're planning for. And to be able to plan for these incentives as a part of their goal might make their projects more easily achievable. So a great thing to bring up to any folks that are climate conscious. And then last or not, do your clients design or construct a building? Do you have clients that are architects, engineers, contractors? Are they specializing in government or nonprofit work? This is something that they could claim. Or if they have private tax-paying clients, this is something they can use as a tool to bring value to their clients. So it's great for them to know about these programs, even if they're not able to capitalize on them. And then last, I want to just highlight what's important to look for in a 179D partner or any tax incentives partner. Experience is important, right? These programs have been around for a long time, and the rules do change as more guidance, more law is published. So having somebody who understands these programs on your team is very important. Being a consultant is important as well, right? You want somebody who specializes in this, somebody who is breathing these programs day in, day out, who can help consult, educate, ensure that you're up to date and understand exactly what's available to you or your clients. I think the education piece is really important, right? It's not just about implementing the study. It's about having somebody who can answer your questions as you navigate them through with your clients. Professional engineers, right? That's really important. There needs to be a professional engineer on staff. So they need to be there for the certifications and the site visits. Again, a licensed contractor can do this work as well. We just happen to have professional engineers on staff, which is why I highlight those folks. Again, do they provide high quality service and deliverables? There should be deliverables that come along with this, with those being all those compliance documents that we had discussed. And do they provide other complementary services like 45L cost segregation or the investment tax credit? This is important so that you don't miss any opportunities that could come along with some projects that are eligible for the 179D deduction. All right, that's it. Thank you so much. I know we're just slightly over the 50-minute mark, but I certainly appreciate your time and your thoughtful questions. I will go ahead and kick it off over to Austin to close us out.
Yeah, thanks so much, Abby. Super informative. Hopefully everybody learned something new about 179D and some of these other incentives that Abby touched on. If you are a CPA working with clients who could potentially benefit from any of these, I think it's important to mention that we do offer no risk assessments to help identify those opportunities. So it's kind of a straightforward way to ensure your clients aren't missing out on valuable savings and leaving any money on the table. So I know there's Abby's email right there on the slide, and I think we've got a few handouts as well that you have access to, but I'm going to go ahead and drop my email and Abby's email again into the chat. And I think that will wrap everything up. If we didn't get to your question, feel free to email us as well if you want to follow up about those questions, and we'll make sure that we respond to those and respond to any of those questions that we didn't get to.
Awesome. Well, fantastic, folks. And we here at CPA Academy, we're going to wrap things up as well. Your credit will be processed today and will be available to you in your account within approximately 24 hours. Please check your inbox right now, folks, because there's a full webinar evaluation there. And remember, there will be a full recording as well as all course materials in your account. Thanks again for our fabulous presenters today coming in with us, Abby Massey and Austin Legler. And of course, to you for spending time with us as attendees. We do indeed look forward to seeing all of you on future webinars. And please have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.